This story, titled 10 Years of Addiction, One Moment of Clarity, is about the darkest chapter of my life and the light I found at the end of it. My name is Lisa. I'm 35 years old, and I grew up in a small town in Indiana. For most of my childhood, I was the girl with big dreams, a girl who believed she'd someday conquer the world. I imagined myself as an artist, a writer, or maybe even a teacher. But life doesn't always follow the script we write for it. I had a happy enough upbringing. My parents loved me, though they worked long hours and weren't always home. My dad was a truck driver, and my mom managed a diner, often pulling double shifts. I grew up independent, learning to fend for myself and entertain my own curiosity. But when I turned 15, my world began to change. My dad lost his job, and money became tight. The stress at home was palpable, and I found myself searching for an escape. I started hanging out with a different crowd. Kids who didn't ask questions, who didn't judge. At first, it was innocent. Skipping class, smoking a little, sneaking drinks at parties. It felt like freedom. I didn't realize then how quickly freedom could turn into chains. By the time I was 18, I had tried drugs for the first time. It wasn't something I sought out, it just happened. I was at a party, someone offered me a little pill, and I thought, why not? That decision changed the trajectory of my life. At first, it felt incredible. My problems disappeared, replaced by a warm haze that made everything seem manageable. But the more I chased that feeling, the harder it became to find it. Before I knew it, I wasn't just experimenting anymore. I was using to survive. The years that followed were a blur. I dropped out of college, lost touch with my friends, and distanced myself from my family. I was ashamed, but I didn't know how to stop. Addiction is like quicksand. The harder you struggle, the deeper you sink. I started lying, stealing, and manipulating to feed my habit. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd quit when things got better. But things never got better. I hit rock bottom when I was 28 years old. I had just lost my job at a retail store after showing up late for the third time that week. My landlord was threatening to evict me, and my phone had been cut off because I couldn't pay the bill. One night, I found myself sitting alone in a tiny apartment that smelled of stale smoke and regret. I was broke, isolated, and exhausted. I looked around at the mess I had created and realized that I didn't recognize the person I had become. The worst part? I didn't think I was worth saving. That moment of despair could have been the end of my story. But instead, it became the beginning of something new. A week later, I woke up in a hospital bed. I had overdosed. My neighbor had found me unconscious in the hallway and called 911. I remember opening my eyes, feeling the weight of my choices pressing down on me like a ton of bricks. The nurse standing by my bed looked at me with a mix of concern and compassion. "You're lucky to be alive," she said. Her words echoed in my mind long after she left the room. During my hospital stay, I had a visitor. My mom, who I hadn't seen in nearly a year, walked into the room. She looked older than I remembered, her face etched with worry lines I knew I had caused. She didn't say much, just sat beside me, holding my hand. Her silence spoke volumes. It was as if she was saying, "I'm here. I love you. But this has to stop." Something shifted in me that day. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark a tiny thought. What if I could change? That was the beginning of my journey to recovery. It wasn't a straight path. It never is. There were relapses, moments of doubt, and days when I wanted to give up. But there were also small victories, like the first time I went a week without using, or the first time I laughed, really laughed, without being high. I enrolled in a 90-day rehab program where I learned about the disease of addiction and how it had taken hold of my life. I attended therapy, joined support groups, and began rebuilding my relationship with my family. The moment of clarity that truly solidified my commitment came during a group therapy session. A fellow participant shared their story, describing how addiction had stolen their dreams and their dignity. I saw myself in their words, and for the first time I understood that I wasn't alone. We're all searching for something, I realized. For connection, for meaning, for love. And somewhere along the way I had tried to fill that void with substances that only deepened it. Recovery wasn't easy. It never is. It's messy, raw, and full of moments when giving up feels easier than pressing forward. But every day, I woke up and chose to fight. Not just for myself, but for the life I wanted to build, for the person I wanted to become. After leaving rehab, I moved back to my hometown to stay with my mom. It wasn't an easy decision. Going home meant facing the wreckage I had left behind. It meant apologizing to people I had hurt, rebuilding trust that had been shattered, and confronting the shame that had consumed me for so many years. One of the hardest moments came when I sat across from my younger sister, Emily, at our mom's kitchen table. Emily had always been my biggest supporter growing up, but my addiction had driven a wedge between us. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of hurt and hope, and asked, "Are you really going to stay clean this time?" Her question stung, but I knew it was fair. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "I don't expect you to believe me right away, but I'm going to prove it to you." Rebuilding relationships was only part of the journey. I also had to rebuild myself. For years, I had defined myself by my addiction, but now I had to figure out who I was without it. I started small, taking long walks, journaling, and rediscovering hobbies I had abandoned. Painting became my escape, a way to express emotions I couldn't put into words. Each brushstroke felt like a step toward healing, a reminder that I was capable of creating something beautiful out of the chaos. I also leaned heavily on my support network. My weekly meetings became a lifeline, a place where I could be honest about my struggles without fear of judgment. Hearing others share their stories reminded me that I wasn't alone, and that recovery was a lifelong journey, not a destination. One day, about a year into my sobriety, I was walking through a park near my mom's house when I saw a little girl flying a kite with her dad. Her laughter echoed through the air, pure and unfiltered, and for a moment, I just stood there, watching. That's when it hit me. I wanted that kind of joy in my life. Not the fleeting, artificial high I had chased for so many years, but the real, lasting kind. The kind that comes from connection, from love, from being fully present in the moment. As I continued to heal, I found myself drawn to helping others who were struggling with addiction. I started volunteering at a local recovery center, sharing my story with people who were just starting their journey. At first, I wasn't sure if my words would make a difference, but the more I shared, the more I saw how powerful stories could be. One woman, in particular, stood out. Her name was Carla, and she reminded me so much of myself, angry, scared, and unsure if she was worth saving. After one of my talks, she pulled me aside and said, "Hearing you gives me hope. If you can do it, maybe I can too." That moment reaffirmed why I had chosen recovery, not just to save myself, but to help others see that they too were capable of change. Today, I'm 3 years sober. Those words still feel surreal to say out loud, but they're a testament to the strength I never knew I had. My life isn't perfect, but it's mine. And for that, I'm endlessly grateful. I've reconnected with my family, and while some wounds are still healing, our bond is stronger than it's been in years. I've built a career as a peer recovery coach, helping others navigate the same rocky path I once walked. And most importantly, I've learned to forgive myself for the choices I made, the people I hurt, and the time I lost. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that recovery is possible. No matter how far you've fallen or how lost you feel, there's always a way back. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but every step forward is a victory. If my story resonates with you, if you or someone you love is battling addiction, know that you're not alone. There's help out there, and there's hope, even when it feels like there isn't. Please like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to my channel for more stories of resilience and hope. Together, we can create a community where healing and connection thrive. Thank you for listening, and remember, no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way to find the light.